Hey, everybody. Good afternoon to my European friends. If anybody's still up in Asia, Australia, happy nighttime. Good morning to my American, South American friends. Happy Thanksgiving to the Americans. I'm not here, or there, I should say, on U.S. soil for Thanksgiving this year, but wishing you all the best. Hello, David. Good afternoon to you. Just wanted to show a couple charts, a couple updates. I know market's jittery. And got a couple interesting things here. We have our old power curve, right? Bitcoin's definitely power. It's not exponential, as I tell you guys all the time. And if we look in recent weeks, we're dropping. How far below? All right, there's the median. This is quantile now. This is not measuring my multiples, so it'll give us a smooth forward and backward curve. But here we have the median, 40%, 30%. Getting very close to, rough waters there. Hello, Dr. Gonzo. We'll see. Now, the positive way to look at this is based on history, we still have a 70% chance to just return to these levels. Anywhere here. 70% of the time, we're going on in there. But of course, the risk is that we face maybe some drops to these levels or these levels. Power curve, my estimate, about 125K by the year end. All right. 120 now. And at 90K, we're a good 30K below it. A lot of action happening at the 95K level. But strictly speaking, statistically, 70% of the time, Bitcoin's price is above this band. As I've said a few times on recent shows, I thought we'd be spending these weeks sort of having fun and talking about the days where we'd be above the 9 and thinking, just preparing ourselves for how many days perhaps Bitcoin's price could be above the 9. It's not happening. And in fact, the bigger question that people might want to think about is how many days could we be below the 3? It's about Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? Jamie Dimon goes from calling it a fraud to offering a new product on the market. I also saw that the ETF options limits, is that right? What's the word there? Were increased, which is also good news. Um, that is how many contracts can be floated on the market, if I recall correctly. Like it's gone into the top tier for Bitcoin options compared to all other stocks. It's always possible we could go back into this level. Right? And again, statistically speaking, if it's 30% of the time, all right, in this level, we're at how many days? It's over 6,000. Let me just tell you really quick on the top of my head. Shoot. 1 second. It's about 6,100, 6,200. But basically, that's 600 days. It's 10% of that times 3. 1,800 days, technically. Uh, you know, during the life of Bitcoin, we have been at these levels. And then, of course, you could just do simple division of how many years for that. Based on the worst of the worst, I don't think it's going to be more than a few months if we do trend lower, right? On the worst of the worst. But still hard to know. Still hard to know at this point if we're going to rebound. Like if this is just a, like it was a dip, and if it's a dip, it's just still hard to know at this moment. Also seems unlikely to have a super deep bear if we haven't had a super bull. So that's where we are. But another wild thing. Thank you, Coop. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Another wild thing is if we look at this, the old tech, AI boom, which I'm represented here by just the top 8 American tech stocks. All right, Broadcom, chip company here. Not as big as TSMC, but it's big. And then, of course, NVIDIA. It can be wild, it can be volatile, but we can also put a trend line on this. All right. Now, tech, unlike Bitcoin, and gold would be the same. Everything is the same in TradFi. It's exponential. So we have it on log scale here. We run a curve, we can get an exponential curve. It's even a better fit over the last, over the life of Bitcoin. I ran this over the life of Bitcoin. 99% R squared. And that growth rate, the slope of this curve, that is 24.3%. It's massive. Now, Bitcoin's growth rate on a curve, these curves, specifically the OLS curve, the black line, is going to be 42% by the end of the year. So Bitcoin still grows faster, even though the rate of growth declines, the power curve. But this remains a massive question mark, right? And I think a lot of liquidity investors that could be interested in Bitcoin are also invested here in these markets. All right. So this is market cap of those 8 stocks at the moment, $22.7 trillion. Above trend. let's look a little bit where the trend lines are. Median is about the OLS at this point. 60th, 70th, 80th. So it's the opposite, right? Bitcoin, we're at, below the 70th percentile right now. Sorry, below the 30th percentile, which means 70% of the time price is above us based on the power trend, which is a great R squared. 70% of the time, we got price action above us. But in tech, 80% of the time, price is below us. So it's question mark. How much longer can this train go? I'm not, and by the way, an answer, a totally legitimate answer, could be for a long time, right? You can have huge crashes here. Facebook gets destroyed with the metaverse. Liberation Day can cause major disruptions in this market, as well as plenty of other, booms and busts. But this is a pretty strong curve, and we're at the top end of it. So I don't have an answer for you, but it's sort of as I like to do, trying to leave you with a philosophical picture here for Thanksgiving for our American friends, as these are American stocks. Hello, Matt. So the quantile is basically, you can make any quantile you want, but it's a slice of the data and then run a regression on it. It's a little bit different than the multiple analysis I do before, where I get that squiggly line. When you do this, it is probably statistically better, although you can't easily, give you those multiples of where the price is, relative to trend. But I can give you smooth lines here, which is kind of nice. But when you sort it all out, you run all the data, you basically get as I've been saying, a percentile, or a percent of the time where the data is either above or below what you chart. So here it's 80%. So 80% of the time, the market cap of the top 8 tech stocks put together relative to the exponential trend is below this red line. So it's an interesting phenomenon, I think, for the markets where Bitcoin investors lie, is they're also running super hot with their, with their stock trades. And Bitcoin is running super low. Bitcoin is almost the inverse. It would be the inverse if it was, say, the 20th percentile, right? Which might pass. 20th percentile is $77,000 Bitcoin. So again, an answer could be that with AI, with inventions that AI might come up with, we could have a massive reduction in costs across the economy, a lot of efficiencies, and these tech stocks could even go up further. That's possible. Also a little monetary inflation here or there. I need to show you some fundamental values. I know, like some price to earnings ratios and these things, but if you just graph out the market cap, it is pretty remarkable. There's really nothing better in the TradFi economy than this. You know, banks don't do as well. Nothing does as well. If you want to talk about public markets, then pretty much these stocks, a few others here or there. So, and of course, this also represents the AI trade. So here's a wild question or scenario. What if we take the market cap of Bitcoin and we divide it by the market cap of the top 8 tech stocks? What will we get? The answer is here. We have Bitcoin as a percentage of the top tech stocks. All right, so here's a trend on this. This is just percentages, though. Okay. And you notice, again, we have a weirder phenomenon with Bitcoin, which seems to represent something like, I don't know, stagnation relative to the top tech stocks. I'm not saying it can't turn around. In fact, I think it certainly will. But we've been off this trend since 2022. Even though it's certainly a power trend, right? But the reversion to the trend is quite a bit harder here. And watch if we do percentiles now. Let's start at the median. 50% of the time, it's right here. 40, 30, 20, 10. And we're still below. In fact, every day right now we set in new lows. New lows. Which is wild. I really should round this to 2 decimals, I know. But we're rounding to 0.1% in Bitcoin market cap versus the market cap of the top 8 tech stocks, where the trend should at least be 0.2%. And obviously you can see that's still a big difference. I can increase our precision here. Let me go for that. Just give me 1 second. But I was quite surprised at the persistence of this drop. Yeah. Again, you're looking at the strongest competitor to Bitcoin as far as a bucket of value is concerned. And I know tech is not a really, Bitcoin is a new tech, but it's not, it's totally different dynamics than the tech market. Happy Thanksgiving, Pavel. Did I, oops, sorry. Gonna refresh it. And we'll get a little bit better precision. Go back here though. Actually, I just realized something on there. My code messed up. That was supposed to be, it is 10%, isn't it? Always have to do these things on the fly, it seems. Why did the code not run that as... All right, give me 1 second. Just 1 second. Of course, we're not 1%, we're 10%. But the point is, if things mean revert for the tech market and then they mean revert for Bitcoin, that's a big move for Bitcoin, right? So that's the good news. The bad news is, this stuff can carry on for a long, long time, right? That's the bad news. Yeah, it's 7.6. All right, one more time. One more time. And of course that needs to be fixed too. Yeah. So not 0.2, but 20. Should be at 24%. We are setting new lows every day at 7.8. Actually, not quite at the low. 7.6 would be the, oh no, we are. Yeah, we're setting, I thought we were setting it. Setting new lows every day. So again, it's good news and bad news. I mean, we could mean revert, and that would be very, very good for Bitcoin, or, this tech crazy boom could continue. That really, you see sort of the massive rise that happened when ChatGPT was released from 2023, and this was when Mark Zuckerberg completely ruined Facebook for a while with the metaverse. I mean, that's still not the only reason, but that was a big crash. But still, if you go all the way back to the start of Bitcoin, tech's had a great, great run. Not as good as Bitcoin, but it's still really good. So, therein lies my query to you. And by the way, this can just still keep going in this direction, and Bitcoin could still do fine, right? Tech is still an apples to oranges comparison with Bitcoin. But I do find it very, very interesting that we Bitcoin is growing at 42% per year on a trend. That's this black line. And we're extremely undervalued at the moment. And to me, you wouldn't even have to say that tech needs to mean revert. Could just fall down a few pegs, right? But it's certainly running hot. Where's the 90th? Yeah. Notice in the meme stock days, did very well above this line. Now maybe it's a little bit of resistance, but who knows? So if you look at this positively, all right, let's say it does mean revert, all right, then it's a possibility that the money goes out of tech, out of the AI boom, goes back into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin goes back up. And then, of course, this one, which is the division of the two, maybe we get back to something like, 20% of this market. Interestingly, we do I wouldn't put too much stock in this. I decided to go out to 2050 to show you. You see that we pass 100% of all the market cap of tech. That is Bitcoin passing it in 2031. I should do a different regression. What I'm doing is basically just the division. I'm actually running a regression on the division of the markets themselves, the market cap of Bitcoin versus the market cap of tech. Probably a better way is to show you the power curve of Bitcoin on the market cap versus this exponential curve of tech and then see when they cross. And they're going to be different numbers, by the way. And we can actually run that right now just with our eyes. So, again, I don't have I do have a market cap of Bitcoin curve. One second. Morning, Tyler. Thank you. We'll see right here how, in another way, how fast Bitcoin can possibly pass all the tech, or if it does, because it's still a very fast rate of growth at 24%. But I'll show you. Gosh darn it! Come on, come on. I would love to get these in more organized form in an app for you guys. It's just not ready yet. All right, let's do it this way. Right. So here is, I thought I had it. I already forgot that I had it. But I think it's a slightly different software program that I did for each, but it shows that basically we're not going to pass it, which we don't have to, because again, these are stocks, and one is stocks and one is Bitcoin, but this would be another way to do it. So rather than plot the division, which I'm doing here, which again we are like super, super low on. Okay, this is the division of Bitcoin divided by top 8 tech. And as you see there, we're 9.25%. We can also just plot both curves. This is monthly though, so it's slightly different. Let's just see what it looks like. Yeah, sorry. Let me go back. That's not even the correct market cap because this is must have not been updated. Yeah, we're only about 1.8. Forget that. Let's use our eyes. Be try to be very precise here. I don't think it really should matter, actually. Why is that high? I'm trying to figure it out. Anyway, doesn't matter. This is monthly frequency. So this shows we would never cross. This is also the interesting thing I'm still trying to figure out is, it's possible that Bitcoin just goes exponential. Although that's not exactly the future that we want. It's very easy for Bitcoin to cross, the value of U.S. treasuries or gold or the monetary base, all of these things. Because even though they're larger values, they grow slower. But the tech world, if we just define it here as an asset, collectively, just the top 8 assets, they do grow really quick. 25.8% CAGR. It's really, really fast. So you don't quite catch it. But the question I have is, if Bitcoin is, the most saleable asset and people start denominating things in Satoshis and debt markets start to look very, very different, maybe the rest of TradFi will start to pull down and not grow at these crazy exponential rates that are often unstable and cause a lot of boom and bust. So that's what I'm trying to model out at the moment, sort of figure out. Theoretically, Bitcoin's just base money. It doesn't need to cross every asset, right? Be more valuable than every asset class. Here's another example. This is the price of Bitcoin, right? But we have the world base money supply, which is here, which I do every quarter, and I'm finishing up third quarter still, even though it's so slow to get a lot of the data, which is 27 trillion at the moment, 27 trillion. And then we have world broad money, which is 142 trillion. This is broader than M2, it's M3, it's all the liquid deposits in the world, right? And it's probably understated, probably even more. So we have, repurchase agreements, euro dollars, which are offshore dollars, money market funds, stable coins, by the way, will go in here. So a lot of liquidity sloshing around. Bitcoin's still a flea compared to that. But it's going to be very interesting. Look, Bitcoin still moves at this very beautiful, sustainable power curve, is the price on this axis. And if I put the left-hand axis on log scale, you can see, or you should be able to see, these things are straight lines on log. They're exponentials. You go back to this. Here's base money. It's the same curve, which we're way under budget, actually. We're base money should be like 34 trillion. And this isn't all the way updated, this one, but we're only 27 trillion, as I said. Oh, no, sorry, that was as of June. Doesn't matter. Yeah, 27 trillion. It's actually come down a little bit. But this is also because the currencies lose their value. Anyway, you plot it all together, you try to figure out where we cross. And Bitcoin probably is going to cross at this mythical $100 trillion mark somewhere around 2040, 2041. This is the thing that makes most sense. Like, this is the thing where Bitcoin really competes. Okay. But I still have a, sort of an outstanding question is, you're going to have some assets that even right now grow faster over the long run than Bitcoin on exponential scale. So how will Bitcoin do against those assets in the future? If AI solves all problems and we don't, we have free energy, not going to happen anytime soon. But if we have free energy, you don't need money. So maybe, you just want a piece of stock markets. And just being a little bit tongue in cheek, Bitcoin's a very wonderful asset for the uncertainty that is around these days. But it's very interesting that, you can find certain asset classes that over the long run are still going gangbusters compared to Bitcoin. And gold, by the way, is not one of them. There's gold. Grows at a measly 6.7% per year since 2008. Not that stellar. It is going gangbusters right now, way over trend, right? Trend is 13 trillion. Gold market's close to 24 trillion at the moment. Unbelievable. Happy Thanksgiving, Gio. Good morning, Roberto. Recession is called, Gio. In America, you have to wait for the sage economists to tell you that there's been 2 quarters of negative growth. It takes time. But in the real world, you just look at the stock market. You think it's crashing? Here would be an interesting thing to look at. Right? You can see the volatility of exponential markets, right? The same stock, crazy top 8 tech titans. Not including Tesla, by the way. I know some people think Tesla should be in there, but I don't have them in there. These markets will reach $1 quadrillion in 2043. Bitcoin's not gonna catch that. Which it doesn't have to. Doesn't have to. Let's take this off. But the point I wanted to say when I started this video is, it is interesting. I mean, this can run for a long time. I have no idea how long it's going to run. It's a great trend, right? 99% R squared. Tech stocks. Slope of this trend line is 24% per year. And last year's growth was 33%. Because we're coming out of... Actually, where are we coming off of? Coming off of here. This is, I guess... No, this will be after the election. Oops, sorry. Anyway, it's 33% year-on-year growth. But the slope of the trend, the black line, is 24%. So the point is, if this might be a little bit overvalued, or AI is not all it's cracked up to be, and we revert to the mean, some of that investment could go back here. because here we're quite undervalued relative to the beautiful power trend. Literally the inverse of what tech stocks and AI are doing. I think a big risk is this deflationary shock from AI, actually. I think, I don't, there is a lot of credit, but there's always a lot of credit. I don't think those leverage ratios are as out of whack as they were in 2008. But we do have, systemic changes in the labor market. Everybody wants to just keep cutting costs, and AI is going to help people do that. So what happens when you have this sort of self-reinforcing trend of more cost cutting, cheaper and cheaper labor costs, but then more expensive energy costs? And to pay for the people that are out of work, you got to increase the SNAP program in the US or UBI, whatever it might be. That eventually would be good for Bitcoin. Although, again, we sound like heartless cheerleaders when we cheerlead for that, or at least I think we do. And I'm sure most people aren't cheerleading for that, but yeah, it's certainly wild times. Question mark is how Bitcoin does in such a scenario, because Bitcoin really has, talked about this with Sminston yesterday and Maurizio. Bitcoin was born in the crisis, never had a full financial crisis to contend with. But it's how you want to look at it, right? I mean, theoretically, we're way oversold. And theoretically, tech is way overbought. And if you look at right there, and you look at the percentage of those two, which is here, we become even worse, like every day worse, down to 7.6% of the top 8 tech stocks. Pretty wild. Are you speaking of Bitcoin? Bitcoin being highly correlated to the stock market? Here's 92% R squared. But notice how it's a power curve. So Bitcoin's relationship dominates. The fact that Bitcoin's a power curve. This is not a straight line on log scale, but it's that power curve. So, well, what do you think? You think Bitcoin's going down more in a stock crisis? We could have what gold did. It went down for a few months in 2009 and then started to go back up. We could have that scenario. So you think we go to, which percentile do you think we go to? Here's your options. They actually don't look that bad to me. Presuming we stay on this percentile, and we don't set new lows which is totally possible. By the end of the year, 60K Bitcoin. We all know the we all know their antidote, or at least what they think is the antidote. It's going to be more money printing. Whether you look at base money or broad money, this green line is going to keep going up and to the right. Green shaded area, both of them. Again, the base, is more comparable to Bitcoin. Mm. I've heard people throw out those really, really low ball numbers, but they are extreme. I mean, those are maximal moves. Like we've never. The trend doesn't suggest that, right? I'm not saying it's not possible. Even if you just look at this one, right? The only time we really set that low was here, 2022, and that was after two big booms. So it's possible. But again, this level is still 60, 55, 58. And then you'd have to ask the question, okay, you got Wall Street buying so much, how much are they going to really wait? You know, even during this period, it lasted 2 months, mid-November to just a month and a half, really, before we boosted out of that level of the 15K. And of course, we have the IBIT holdings. They're going to want to keep increasing them, certainly at those prices. And I know it's an ETF, it's a fund. I mean, it's how much they sell the fund. It's true, people could sell out of it at low prices too. But the trend is up. Hello, Timo. Or Timo, sorry. Timo. I have not read this argument. That's interesting. I would like to talk to Giovanni about that. I mean, everything is going to be related to another asset in some way. You can even look at, and we talked about this, and I was, on stream surprised myself when people started to ask about it, right? As you can look at the other currencies, and they're still holding to a power curve. And then you look at with gold, God, it's so slow this. Hold on. One second. But you look at with gold, or the Turkish lira, or the naira, or other sort of weaker currencies. That's still a power curve, as with gold. This one is my multiple analysis, so this is where you get the squiggly lines, not the beautiful percentile lines, but it doesn't matter. Um, I mean, it's still a power curve, right? It's a very, very discounted power curve at the moment. But I see a 95% R squared there. I mean, I see a good relationship. In fact, I see an even better argument that this would rebound to the mean than, say, this one, which is tech stocks, which is a different beast entirely. And I just showed it, today because I thought it was interesting, and but tech continues on, right? I mean, it's growing. Remember, this is 24% per year is the slope of this trend line. This is super good. Gold against the dollar grows at 5, 6, 7%, less than 7% on a trend. So could it be that gold is doing a major revaluation that's never happened for 20 years or 15 years? Maybe. But gold miners don't hold gold. They hold dollars. So the gold industry in itself, it's an interesting question. I'd have to talk to Giovanni. I don't exactly understand his reasoning. The gold industry in itself looks at the perspective of dollars as well, just like Bitcoin. You have to triangulate. It's true. I mean, you go from Bitcoin to dollars and then gold to dollars, and you can triangulate Bitcoin gold. But like I said, you still have a power law with the Turkish lira or the naira or other currencies as well with Bitcoin. So the power law is holding with all of those relationships. And just to be clear, as we are half the trend now, really a third, right? See, the price is 21. This is ounces of gold. So we're 21 ounces of gold at the moment. Unbelievably cheap. What's today's? It's 27th, right? Yes, Thanksgiving. 21.8 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. I should do a quantile, but whatever. On my analysis, that's 0.3x the trend, 10th percentile. Very, very cheap. If we get back to that black line, that's $250,000 Bitcoin at least at $4,000 gold. So that's in the realm of possibility to me. I don't see why anyone would discount that. I do see, extremely cheap Bitcoin here, but it doesn't mean, in my view, over the midterm that we don't get back to that. I think it's very interesting how everybody's cardinal direction is slightly different, but the world is shrinking fast with AI and everything, and we can pull up these charts very easily and see how these relationships look. I still got to believe that there are gold investors that have been burned by Peter Schiff over the years. Their Bitcoin price is getting pretty cheap, and at some point they might pull the trigger and bring some more demand back to Bitcoin. Thank you. I will check, and I will talk to him about it as well. All of it is doing that basically. Everything is exponential except for Bitcoin. So, and Bitcoin still dominates. So in this example, right, this is Bitcoin versus the tech. Remember, here's the tech stocks alone. Magnificent Eight or whatever, not counting Tesla, but using Broadcom and Oracle. It's an exponential function, and it's on the top end, and it's been on the top end for many, many years, right? Here's the 90th percentile. Bitcoin, as we know, is a power curve. Put those two together, what do you get? You still get a power curve. You don't get an exponential. You do get this really flattening power curve here, which is, weak. It's just Bitcoin is weak compared to this market and to this trend line, but it's just like gold, by the way. But these are also the two markets probably in the world that are doing best against Bitcoin. That is AI and tech, growing at 40% a year for the past 2, 3 years, and gold, growing at 40% a year for the past 2 years. So I'm showing you the best of the best against Bitcoin, but you still got a power curve. Like you still have this nice, stable relationship that Bitcoin shows. So I'll just have to talk to him what his ideas are there. Economy slowing, geopolitical issues rising. Uh, Pretty good as well. I think I have it. I want to harmonize everything with. There's three different ways that I do it, right? I do the OLS, quantile, and then what I typically like to do is the OLS multiples of the actual result over the OLS. And I don't have them harmonized enough. But let me see if we have S&P 500. I think we do. I mean, to me, it means that Bitcoin's still following the power curve, even though it's like super cheap for gold bugs right now, but it's still 95% R squared. So if Giovanni says that the power trend against gold doesn't make sense, I'd still have to learn more, I guess. But let me go back to your question here. Same deal. 95% R squared. All right. Again, cheap. Cheap. So this is kind of a janky number, but um, it's Bitcoin's. Wait, did I do that right? Yeah, it's the percent. I should put a percent. This is the percent. It's the same thing as before. This is the percentage of Bitcoin's price versus the S&P. So if buying one S&P 500 index meant buying the S&P, you could buy 13% of it right now. What's the S&P? No, the S&P is like 6,000, right? So I think I'd labeled that wrong. Bitcoin's 13 times larger than the S&P. Used to be more. Regardless, you can see that the trend is growing. Bitcoin is getting more valuable versus the S&P. And it's still a power curve. But we're getting cheap. We're getting very, very cheap. Any way you slice it. Geo's very bearish, though. Geo thinks $30,000 Bitcoin soon. Sure, yeah. I mean, good question. I'll have to talk to him about it because I don't quite get it. But bottom line, the thing that really shows where Bitcoin fits is that oil chart that I had, right? So I'll show it again. Hope I didn't. I mean, this is just a crazy chart to me. So here we go. This is bottom line. Regardless of if it's a power or an exponential curve, Bitcoin miners make $1.5 billion a month. It's their 30-day revenue. It's not even a record. That was set in March 2024. So we're not even at all-time highs. Here's how much gold miners make over 30 days. Bitcoin's still on the chart, notice. It's $38 billion a month. Richest they've ever been. It's going to be a very nice Christmas for people in the gold industry. And then oil. Quite a flat, by the way, oil trend compared to, I don't know, 20 years ago. Specifically, if you count this pre-2008 number. $320 billion a month. Or $3 trillion a year. $3 trillion a year in revenue. Quite a flat, actually, trend over the last 20 years for oil, but nonetheless, you really see this scale of where we are. Bitcoin, gold, and oil. So yeah, we can move sideways down for many months. That wouldn't be anything unusual. Ah, you think we go to 180K first? Well, this is back to my excitement still. As you guys know, perhaps I'm the last person standing on at least the power law crew that thinks we could still boom. Cycles might still be intact. But I'm too much of a wimp to say we will. I just don't know. No one knows. But why count the cycles out until we're well past December, right? Who knows? We could absolutely go to 180K. 80th percentile move. We've easily cleared that every last boom, right? In fact, getting to the 90th would take us right about that level. This is slightly different. This is quantile. It's different than my multiple analysis. Remember, my 90th was 250. 250. I was usually showing you guys. This one's probably statistically better. Get these smooth lines. Anyway, you get the idea. And I do think, yeah, if we do go to those boom levels again, above the 9, above the 90th percentile, then yeah, could be some pain. But we still have this rough idea as well that if we have pain the next year, usually after the 4-year cycle, except for 2022, we never went below the high of the last boom, right? So 2017 went down to 3K, a little bit, yeah, 3K. That was higher than 1200, which was the 2013 top. And then 2022 we did pierce the 20K level, which was the prior top. But 30K is super low, Gio. That's super, super low. Totally can happen, but statistically it would be a record. So that's my, I don't know, variety of charts for you guys on Thanksgiving. Where we're certainly cheap, people are eyeing this market. 10% of the monetary base, 7% of the tech AI boom market. Super cheap. Could get cheaper, but also could be that tech reverts down and Bitcoin reverts up. Gold reverts down, Bitcoin reverts up. Well, that's possible. And why say the cycles are finished when we haven't finished the year? All right, guys. That's all I'm going to do for today. Thanksgiving to my American friends. Thank you, Jay. I'm going to run as well. So thank you for watching, even the recordings. To my American friends, happy Thanksgiving. I wish I was in the States this year to have some good turkey, but doing a small one here with our fam. And for our European friends, I'll see you tomorrow in the morning, finally. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Take care. Stay calm. Stack sats. Bye.